In the bright and peaceful village of Nambirai, there lived a young girl named Tandy. She was the only daughter of a rich trader named Mr. Bako. Their house was the biggest in the village, with painted walls and shining windows that caught the sunlight. Tandy had everything she could ever want: fine clothes from the city, golden earrings, and servants who carried her school bag every morning. But with all this wealth came pride. Tandy believed she was better than everyone else. When she walked through the market, she never greeted the sellers. When other girls smiled at her, she lifted her chin and looked away. The elders often said, "That child's heart is heavier than her father's gold." But Tandy did not care. She thought kindness was only for the poor. One hot afternoon, the village road was quiet except for the chirping of birds and the soft rustle of palm leaves. Tandy walked home from school holding a fancy umbrella to block the sun. On the roadside, an old woman was trying to lift a heavy bundle of firewood. Her hands shook and sweat rolled down her wrinkled face. The bundle slipped and some sticks scattered on the dusty path. Instead of helping, Tandy laughed loudly. She said, "Grandmother, maybe you are too old for this. Why not sit under a tree and let young people do the work?" The old woman looked at her quietly. Her eyes were not angry, but there was something deep in them, something that made even the wind pause. Still, Tandy felt proud of her own words and walked away, swinging her bag. When she reached home, her father was counting money in the yard. "Where have you been, my child?" he asked kindly. "I saw an old woman on the road," Tandy said with a smirk, "trying to carry wood. I told her to stay home instead of wasting her strength." Mr. Bako frowned. "You must never speak that way to an elder. The blessing of old people keeps our hearts safe." But Tandy only rolled her eyes. "Father, blessings cannot buy fine things," she said and went inside. That night, as the moon rose, Tandy could not sleep. She tossed and turned in her bed. In her dream, she saw the same old woman walking through a glowing fire, calling her name softly. "Tandy? Tandy?" The woman's voice echoed like the wind in the trees. Tandy woke up with a gasp, her heart beating fast. She ran to the window, but the road outside was empty. The next morning, she told her friend Nala about the dream. Nala frowned. "Maybe it means something. Some dreams are not just dreams." Tandy laughed. "You and your silly stories. It was only my mind playing games." Later that day, she went to the village well to fetch water. The air was quiet except for the sound of the rope squeaking as the bucket went down. When she turned, she froze. The old woman was standing there again, holding an empty gourd. "My child," the old woman said softly, "may I have a little water to drink?" Tandy raised her eyebrow. "There is plenty of water in the well. Fetch it yourself." Still smiling, the woman replied, "I would, but my arms are weak. Help me, and the gods will help you one day." Tandy scoffed. "I don't need help from anyone, not even your gods." Then she filled her own gourd with water and poured it on the ground, right in front of the old woman. The dust rose, and the woman simply watched her. "You mock the thirsty," the old woman said slowly. "But remember, even the river can dry when pride rules the heart." For the first time, Tandy felt a strange chill, though the sun was hot. She wanted to say something sharp, but her tongue felt heavy. Instead, she turned and hurried away. Behind her, the old woman's voice floated through the air, soft, calm, and full of meaning she could not understand. That evening, strange things began to happen. When Tandy combed her hair, her mirror cracked in two. When she tried to eat, her food tasted bitter. Her mother blamed bad luck, but Mr. Bako's face grew worried. "You must have offended someone," he said. "Go to Baba Kito, the village healer, and ask for cleansing." But Tandy refused. "I did nothing wrong," she said. "Why should I beg for forgiveness?" At night, the dream came again. This time, the old woman's voice was louder. "Pride is a fire that burns its own master," she said. Flames surrounded Tandy in the dream and she screamed, but no one heard her. When she woke up, sweat drenched her clothes. She rushed to the window and for a moment she thought she saw the old woman standing near the gate, her shadow stretching long and dark. Then it was gone. Days passed and her life slowly began to fall apart. Her father's store was robbed, their goats disappeared, and sickness came to their house. The villagers whispered that maybe the spirits were angry. Each time Tandy saw a shadow or heard a whisper, she thought of the old woman at the well. Still, her pride would not let her ask for forgiveness. She kept saying to herself, "I did nothing wrong. She was just an old woman." But deep down, something had changed in her. The laughter that once filled her voice was gone. Her eyes often looked toward the road, hoping to see the old woman again, to ask perhaps what she truly meant. The proud girl of Nambirai who once mocked the weak, now walked quietly through the same market, her heart heavy and unsure. The smiles of others no longer warmed her. She began to understand that maybe her father had been right, maybe the blessing of old people was worth more than gold. And as the sun set that evening, Tandy stood at her window and whispered softly as if to the wind, "If only I could see her again." Far away in the shadows of the forest, a pair of calm ancient eyes opened slowly, and a faint smile appeared. That night, the moon was full over Nambirai village, lighting the grass roofs like silver. The wind moved softly through the trees, but Tandy could not sleep. She tossed on her bed, her mind restless. When she finally drifted off, a strange dream came to her. In the dream, the road outside her home was burning. The sky glowed red like fire, and out of the flames walked the old woman she had mocked. The woman's eyes were bright and calm, and her voice sounded like the wind through dry leaves. "Tandy," she whispered, "you laugh at age, but age sees farther than youth." The flames swirled around her, yet she did not burn. The old woman stretched out her hand, and suddenly Tandy felt heat all over her body. She screamed and woke up, her clothes wet with sweat. Her heart beat fast and she looked around her dark room. The lamp on her table flickered though no wind had entered. She ran to her mother's room, shaking. "Mother, I saw her, the old woman. She was in my dream. She called my name." Her mother, tired from the day's work, rubbed her eyes. "It was only a bad dream, my child. Go back to sleep." But Tandy could not. She sat by her window until morning, watching the stars fade. The next day she told her best friend Nala what had happened. Nala's eyes grew wide. "Maybe it's a warning. My grandmother says when an elder appears in a dream, it means they have something to teach you." Tandy laughed, trying to hide her fear. "Teach me what?" "How to carry firewood. You believe too many stories." Still, her laughter sounded forced. Deep inside, she could not forget the fire, the whisper, or those calm eyes that had looked through her soul. Days passed. Life in Nambirai went on. Children played, women pounded maize, men returned from the fields, but Tandy felt different. She began to notice small, strange things. Her mirror sometimes fogged even when it was dry. The birds that used to sing near her window flew away when she came close. And each time she looked at her reflection, she thought she saw a shadow standing behind her. One afternoon, the sun was high and the air heavy. Tandy went to the village well to fetch water. The path was quiet except for the crunch of dry leaves under her sandals. When she reached the well, she set her pot down and began to pull the rope. As the bucket came up, she felt someone watching her. She turned, and there stood the old woman again. She looked exactly as before, wrapped in a faded blue cloth, her hands thin but steady, her eyes calm and knowing. Tandy froze, her throat dry. The woman smiled gently and said, "My child, may I have a little water to drink?" Tandy blinked, unsure what to say. Her heart raced, but her pride quickly returned. She lifted her chin. "There is water everywhere, old mother. If you want some, take it yourself." The old woman nodded slowly. "I would, but my arms are weak. A small kindness from you would mean much." Tandy rolled her eyes. "Kindness? I have no time for that." She dipped her gourd into the bucket, filled it, then poured it on the ground. The water darkened the dust at the woman's feet. The old woman looked at the wet soil and then back at Tandy. Her face was calm, but her voice carried power when she spoke. "You pour away what gives life, thinking it proves your strength. But remember, child, even rivers dry when pride rules the heart." The words hung in the air like smoke. The wind picked up, and the trees rustled though the sun still burned hot. Tandy felt something heavy inside her chest, a strange mix of fear and anger. "What do you mean by that?" she demanded. But the old woman only smiled again and turned away, walking slowly down the road. Her figure grew smaller until the dust swallowed her. Tandy stood there for a long time, staring at the empty path. When she finally bent to pick up her pot, the bucket rope snapped, and the bucket fell deep into the well with a loud splash. The sound echoed like laughter. She gasped and stepped back. On the way home, her thoughts would not rest. The woman's words repeated in her mind again and again. Even rivers dry when pride rules the heart. When she reached home, her father was repairing a broken stool. "Why do you look so pale?" he asked. "I saw the old woman again," Tandy said. "She spoke strange things to me." Mr. Bako looked serious. "Was she angry?" "No," Tandy whispered, "but her eyes, they see too much." Her father sighed. "Tandy, there is power in the words of the old. You should listen when they speak." But Tandy could not accept that. "She is just an old woman," she said stubbornly. "She tries to scare me because I am not weak like her." That night, she lay awake again. The wind whistled through the trees, and the shadows outside her window seemed to move. She pulled the blanket close but sleep would not come. At midnight she heard a voice, faint like a breath against her ear. "Tandy." She sat up quickly, heart pounding. The room was empty. But the smell of smoke drifted in, and for a moment she thought she saw a small flame flicker near her mirror. It vanished as quickly as it came. Tandy covered her head and prayed softly, though she barely knew what words to say. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered. "She's only an old woman." But deep inside she felt the truth pressing against her heart. The old woman's words were not just a warning, they were a promise. In the days that followed, strange whispers spread through the village. Some said the old woman was no ordinary traveler. Others said she was a spirit sent by the ancestors to test the hearts of the young. Children avoided the road where she was last seen. Even the goats refused to walk near the well at night. Tandy tried to act brave, but fear followed her like a shadow. When she fetched water, she felt eyes on her back. When she laughed, the sound felt empty. Sometimes she thought she heard someone humming softly in the distance, the same tune she had heard in her dream. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Tandy stood by her window again. She watched the last light fade and whispered to herself, "Even rivers dry when pride rules the heart." The words no longer sounded like an insult, they sounded like truth. Far away on the road outside Nambirai, an old woman walked slowly into the darkness, her soft smile hidden by the night, her eyes glowing faintly like stars. The sun over Nambirai village began to burn hotter, but the light in Tandy's home grew dim. Days after the strange meeting at the well, small troubles started to follow her like shadows. At first they seemed simple, a broken mirror here, a missing shoe there, but soon they grew into something heavier. One morning Tandy's father, Mr. Bako, came home with a tired face. His clothes were dusty, and his hands shook as he placed a bag of coins on the table. "The traders from the city refused my goods," he said quietly. "They say our spices have lost their taste. Something strange is happening." Tandy frowned. "Maybe they are jealous, father. You are still the richest man in Nambirai." But her father only shook his head. "We must be careful, my child. Pride brings blindness. When we stop listening to others, we fall." Tandy rolled her eyes. "You sound like that old woman again." Her father looked up sharply. "What old woman?" "The one who keeps following me," Tandy said with a laugh. "I saw her again at the well. She speaks in riddles and tries to frighten me." Mr. Bako's face turned pale. "You must never disrespect elders, even strange ones. Their words can bless or break." But Tandy only smiled proudly. "I am not afraid of her. She is weak and I am strong." That night, while everyone slept, a storm came from the hills. The wind howled through the trees, shaking the house. Thunder roared like angry drums. When morning came, part of their roof was gone, and the storeroom where her father kept his goods had burned during the night. No one knew how the fire started. By the next market day, the family had lost almost everything. Their servants left one by one, and even their closest friends began to avoid them. When Tandy walked through the market, whispers followed her. "There goes the proud girl," one woman said. "Maybe her pride angered the spirits." Another added, "She mocked the wrong elder. Now her blessings are turning to dust." Tandy heard them but pretended not to care. Still, when she looked at her reflection in a broken mirror that evening, she saw fear hiding behind her proud face. A few days later she went to fetch water again. Her pot slipped from her hands and broke into pieces. She sank to her knees, tears filling her eyes. "Why is everything falling apart?" she whispered. Then she heard footsteps. When she looked up, the old woman was standing before her again. The same calm eyes, the same slow smile. In her hands she carried a small wooden bowl filled with porridge. "My child," the woman said gently, "you look hungry. Eat this. It will give you strength." Tandy stared at the bowl. The smell of warm food made her stomach tighten. She hadn't eaten since morning. For a moment she almost reached out. But then her pride returned, sharp and cold. "Keep your food," she said harshly. "I don't eat from strangers, especially not from you." The old woman's smile faded. "I offer you mercy, child. Do not throw it away." Tandy stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "I don't need your mercy. Leave me alone." And before she could stop herself, she slapped the bowl from the woman's hands. The porridge spilled onto the ground, mixing with the dust. A quiet wind passed between them, and the air suddenly felt heavy. The old woman looked down at the spilled food, then slowly raised her eyes to Tandy's. They were no longer just calm, they glowed faintly like burning coals. "You have spilled not my food," she said softly, "but your last mercy." Tandy froze. Her mouth went dry. The air around her seemed to hum with strange energy. The woman turned away and walked down the road. Her feet made no sound, and after a few steps she faded into the sunlight as if she had never been there. From that moment, Tandy's life changed completely. When she tried to help her mother cook, the fire went out. When she washed clothes, the water turned black. Flowers in their garden dried overnight, and birds stopped singing near their home. At night, she heard whispers around her bed, soft voices saying her name again and again. Her father tried to visit the city to rebuild his trade, but each time, something went wrong. His goods were stolen, his cart broke, and his money disappeared. "It is as if bad luck follows us," he said sadly. "Our family has lost its blessing." The villagers began to avoid them. Children stopped visiting their home. Even Nala, Tandy's best friend, grew distant. "I'm sorry," she told Tandy one morning, "but my mother says your house carries a dark spirit. I can't come any more." Tandy stood at the gate watching her friend walk away. Her chest felt heavy. For the first time she felt truly alone. As the days passed, her beauty began to fade. Her skin lost its glow, her hair became dull, and her laughter disappeared. She spent her days sitting by the window, staring at the road where the old woman had vanished. Sometimes she thought she saw her again, a shadow near the trees, a glimmer in the distance, but when she looked closely there was nothing. Only silence. Her mother grew thin with worry. "We must visit Baba Kito the healer," she said one evening. "He will know what to do." But Tandy refused. "I don't need magic," she snapped. "I need peace." Yet peace would not come. That night, she dreamed once more of the old woman. She was standing in a field of ashes, holding the same wooden bowl. Her voice echoed through the air. "You were given many chances, child. But mercy once wasted, does not return." When Tandy woke up, she could still hear the echo of the words in her ears. She rushed to her father's room, crying, "Father, the old woman won't leave me. What should I do?" Mr. Bako looked at her sadly. "The old woman's curse can only be broken by humility," he said softly. "But pride still lives in your heart." Tandy fell to the floor weeping. "I don't want this anymore," she whispered. "I just want my life back." Outside, the wind blew cold, and the moonlight cast long shadows across the yard. Somewhere far away a faint laugh echoed, not cruel but full of ancient power. The sound carried through the trees and into the night, as if the whole world had stopped to listen. From that day, everything Tandy touched seemed to turn against her. She learned that pride had a price, and she had paid it with every piece of joy she once owned. The days in Nambirai grew long and heavy. The once bright house of Tandy's family had turned silent. Dust gathered where servants used to sweep, and laughter no longer filled the rooms. Tandy hardly spoke anymore. She spent her days sitting near the window, staring at the path that led out of the village, her heart full of regret and confusion. One morning, after another sleepless night, her mother came to her room. "My child," she said gently, "you cannot keep living like this. Go and see Baba Kito. He is wise. Maybe he can help us." Tandy wanted to refuse. Her pride still whispered inside her, but she no longer had the strength to listen to it. She nodded quietly. "I will go." Baba Kito lived at the edge of the village near the river. He was an old man with white hair and a kind face, known for his knowledge of herbs and spirits. When Tandy arrived, she knelt before him and said softly, "Baba, bad things have filled my life. Everything I touch goes wrong. Please tell me what I have done." The old man studied her for a long time, his eyes calm and deep. Then he said, "Child, you know what you have done. Your tongue spoke pride, your hands pushed away kindness, and your heart forgot respect." Tandy lowered her head. "I was foolish," she whispered. "I thought I was strong." Baba Kito nodded slowly. "Strength without humility is weakness in disguise. The woman you mocked was not just an old traveler. She carries the power of the ancestors. You must find her and ask for forgiveness before the moon completes its next turn. If you do not, your shadow will never rest." Tandy felt fear crawl up her spine. "But I don't know where she is," she said. "Then search," Baba Kito replied. "The path of forgiveness is never easy. You must walk it with your heart, not your feet." So the next morning, Tandy left home. She carried a small bag of food, some water, and the hope that maybe the old woman would hear her cry. She walked through fields and dusty roads, asking every person she met, "Have you seen an old woman wearing a blue cloth?" But everyone shook their heads. The days turned hot and her feet grew sore. She crossed rivers, entered small villages and searched through markets, but the old woman was nowhere to be found. Her water finished, her food ran out, and still she walked on. At night, she slept under trees and prayed softly. Please, old mother, wherever you are, forgive me. I was blind with pride. On the 7th day she reached the edge of the forest. Her body was weak and her legs trembled. She took a few more steps before falling to the ground. The earth felt cool beneath her hands and her eyes filled with tears. I cannot walk any more, she whispered. If she does not forgive me, let the earth take me. The wind blew gently through the trees, carrying the sound of rustling leaves. Then slowly a soft voice broke through the air. Child, why do you cry here alone? Tandy looked up weakly. Her breath caught. The old woman was standing before her, just as she remembered, wrapped in her blue cloth, holding a wooden stick, her eyes calm but full of power. Tandy tried to stand, but her legs would not move. Mother, she said through tears, I came to find you. I walked far and long. Please forgive me. I was cruel and proud. I hurt you when you showed me kindness. I lost everything and now I understand. The old woman looked at her silently for a while. Then she walked closer and touched Tandy's head gently. You have learned the hardest lesson, that pride blinds the heart. I came not to destroy you but to teach you. Tandy's tears fell faster. Teach me, mother. Teach me how to live right again. The woman smiled softly. You have already begun. When your heart learns to kneel, your soul begins to rise. A warm wind passed through the forest. Tandy felt light, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The old woman reached into her cloth and brought out a small calabash filled with water. Drink this, she said. It is not ordinary water. It is forgiveness. Let it wash your spirit. Tandy drank slowly. The water was cool and sweet, and as it touched her lips, her tired body felt new strength. The woman helped her to her feet. For the first time in many months, Tandy smiled. Thank you, she whispered. I will never forget this. Go home, child, the woman said. Live with kindness. Help the weak, honor the old, and remember, pride is a shadow that grows until it covers all light. Never let it grow again. Tandy nodded. I promise. The old woman smiled once more, then turned and began to walk into the forest. Tandy watched her until she faded into the mist, just like before. But this time there was no fear, only peace. When Tandy returned to the village, people were surprised. Her face looked different, softer, calm, and full of light. Her mother ran to her and cried with joy. Her father, seeing her smile again, said, The curse has lifted. That night the air in their home felt warm again. The birds returned to their garden, and even the goats bleated happily. The villagers, seeing the change in her, began to greet her kindly once more. Tandy spent her days helping others. She fetched water for old women, shared food with hungry children, and visited the sick. Whenever someone asked her why she worked so hard, she simply said, Because kindness saved me. At night, she sometimes looked out her window toward the forest where she had fallen. The wind would blow softly and she thought she could hear a faint voice saying, Walk in light, child. And every time she heard it, she smiled. The morning sun rose gently over the village of Nambirai, painting the sky in gold and soft pink. The birds sang as if the world had been made new again. Tandy opened her eyes slowly, and for the first time in many months she felt peace. Her room was bright, her bed soft, and the smell of food drifted in from the kitchen. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. But when she sat up and saw her mother smiling by the doorway, she knew it was real. Her father was sitting outside under the mango tree mending a basket. The man who once carried heavy worry on his face now looked calm again. When he saw his daughter, he said with warmth, You look alive again, my child. Tandy smiled shyly. Father, I think my heart is finally clean. The whole house seemed filled with light that day. Servants had returned, neighbors came to greet them, and the birds that had flown away months ago sang loudly in the yard. It was as if the land itself had forgiven them. But Tandy was no longer the same girl. The proud, sharp-tongued daughter of a rich trader was gone. In her place stood a humble, gentle young woman who spoke kindly and listened with care. She no longer walked through the village with her head high and nose lifted. Instead, she greeted everyone with respect, from the old woman selling vegetables to the little children playing in the dust. She went to the well each morning to fetch water with the other women. Some of them whispered behind her back, remembering the days when she had laughed at them. But Tandy did not mind. She smiled, shared her water, and helped them carry their pots. Slowly, their whispers turned into smiles, and their eyes began to trust her again. One afternoon she saw a hungry boy sitting near the market, crying because he had lost his money. In the past she might have walked past him or even mocked him. But this time she sat beside him and said softly, "Do not cry, little one." She bought him food with her own money and stayed until he finished eating. The boy thanked her and said, "May your heart never know hunger." Tandy's eyes filled with tears. She felt the warmth of true joy, not the pride that came from being rich but the peace that came from being kind. Soon the villagers began to notice her change. The elders said, "Tandy has found wisdom," and young girls looked up to her, learning from her gentleness. Even her father said proudly, "She is my true blessing now." She began to visit the sick and bring them food. She helped widows repair their huts and gave her old clothes to the poor. When the school needed new mats, she used her savings to buy them. And when the church roof broke, she was the first to volunteer to fix it. But even in her happiness, Tandy often thought of the old woman, the one who had changed her life. She wondered where she had gone, whether she still walked the forest paths, or if she had returned to the spirit world. Sometimes, when Tandy walked near the trees, she felt the same soft wind that had touched her that day. It carried whispers that only she could hear, a voice calm and strong saying, "Pride destroys faster than magic." Whenever she heard those words, she stopped, closed her eyes and whispered, "I remember, Mother. I will never forget." Years passed and Tandy's name became known in many villages. People came to her for advice and comfort. They called her Mother Tandy, even though she was still young, because her heart was full of wisdom. She taught others to forgive, to share, and to walk in kindness. One day a group of travelers came to Nambairai. Among them was a young girl with bright eyes and a proud smile. She pushed her way through the market, laughed at the poor, and boasted about her father's wealth. Tandy watched her quietly and smiled, remembering who she once was. When the girl dropped her bag and her fruits rolled away, Tandy walked over and helped her pick them up. The girl looked surprised and said, "You don't have to help me. I can pay someone to do it." Tandy smiled gently. "Some things money cannot do, my child. Only a humble heart can." The girl looked at her curiously, not understanding. But as Tandy turned away, the wind blew softly again, brushing against the girl's cheek. She shivered for no reason, as if something unseen had whispered a warning to her. That evening, as Tandy sat outside watching the sunset, her mother came to sit beside her. "You have become such a light to this village," her mother said. "I wish that old woman could see what you have become." Tandy smiled. "She sees me, Mama. I feel her in every wind that blows and in every kind thing I do." The sun sank below the hills, painting the sky orange and purple. The trees swayed gently and Tandy could almost hear the voice again, soft, wise and full of power. "Remember, child, magic fades but the heart stays forever." She whispered, "I remember." The people of Nambairai lived peacefully after that. Whenever someone grew too proud or mocked another, the elders would say, "Do not let pride grow in your heart. Remember what happened to Tandy." And so, her story became a lesson passed from one generation to another, a story not of punishment but of change and grace. Tandy lived a long and gentle life. She built a small school for children and named it the Dawn House, because she said every heart deserved a new beginning just like hers. On quiet evenings, she sat under the mango tree where her father once worked, watching the stars appear. The world around her was still and peaceful. And sometimes, when the night breeze brushed her face, she closed her eyes and smiled, for she knew the old woman's spirit was near, watching, guiding, and reminding her that true magic was not in curses or spells, but in a heart that had learned to love. And under that starlit sky, Tandy whispered softly, "Thank you for giving me a new dawn."